Andrea! Dr. Andrea Traldi.
Hello, Doc.
How's it going?
Very well. Thank you for having me in the podcast.
Thanks for the invitation to come to your place.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And I'm very excited to do this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I want to quickly read the introduction about you, and we take it from there. So, after completing his studies in clinical psychology, Dr. Andrea Traldi expanded his practice to include many years of research in somatics, contemporary art, and the energetic approach of many traditional medicine techniques, including shamanism, kinesiology, hands-on healing, and more. He co-founded Become Network for transdisciplinary projects, the Institute for Applied Somatics, and the Wellco Research Hub for Holistic Collaborative Projects. In February 2022, he was awarded a PhD in transdisciplinary education for his approach to dreamtime exploration through somatics and creativity. In the last decade, he focused specifically on developing protocols that combine intuition and synchronicity to develop a language for multi-sensorial strategies that bridge collective narratives into personal storylines. I am very excited to have this conversation. I think that I have a lot of questions. I'm not really sure where to start or where to end, but yeah, let's see where it takes us.
Yes, with pleasure.
So first of all, could you tell me a little bit about like how your background in clinical psychology has led you to explore this realm of somatic and contemporary art, and also obviously traditional medicine techniques and so on?
Yes, thank you for your question. It was a natural unfolding for me. I went into psychology because I was curious, how does it work, the brain, the thoughts, and I thought I can learn a lot, maybe even explain all the things in my life if I study psychology. I was fascinated as a young adult coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that it's very interesting what you learn studying psychology, but there are things that are not included. And so that led me to all the other moments in my life and studies and research. In particular, contemporary art was the one that followed, because I had friends who were in academia doing fine arts. And I felt a very immediate, palpable connection with their curiosity. When I went to psychology, this is a bit of an anecdote. I thought everybody had the same drive and enthusiasm, so everybody's going to be there, we're going to exchange. I had all these movie references from the 80s, like, yeah, we're going to do experiments between consciousness and subconscious, we're going to do crazy things. And when you do go study psychology, you meet 80% of the people, at least that was my experience, are depressed. So they are there because they want to know more about
how to heal.
Yes, this aspect of psychology, not necessarily the adventure of discovery and the excitement. And so it was interesting, it's very valuable, but I was lacking that enthusiasm element. I didn't find a lot of people ready for adventure. And I could see that my friends in art school, they were super temerary and exploring and, going beyond boundaries. And I thought, okay, I want more of that. Psychology is interesting, but how do I put this inside of that?
Yeah.
And so I went to fine arts in Milan, and I find my group of peers, and that was a very interesting cycle of my life. I started doing art projects. And then again, there are things in my life that I cannot explain. Yes, the language of art is very liberating. You go beyond rational mind, you go beyond scientific explanation and the clinical settings, and it becomes more free. You don't have to have only logic to explain the things that happen in your life. The beauty of art, and while I believe it's important to consider that we are artists first, is because whatever you do is never going to be complete. You are always going to discover something more and create something more and explore in a different way. I think that's the spirit of the artist, any field of art, movement, plastic arts, multimedia. And I think a lot of people in science are actually artists, all the innovators, all the pioneers,
Yes.
because that's exactly the spirit. You dream of something, you have an intuition, you explore, you break new boundaries. Many of them are censored and chased or even burned because they have maybe some discovery in a period where the orthodox knowledge is considered the only truth. And so you become a heretic, but you're actually a scientist. So for me, that element of looking for, always looking for something that makes you feel you can include more elements of experience is something that I connect with the artist sensibility.
Yeah.
And that stayed with me, and I was curious about other things. In particular, I was feeling some aspects of experiences. I had feelings that I could not explain with psychology, with the language of my family, with the language of television. And it was a little bit, imagine you see 9 colors and people talk to you about 6 colors. And you say, okay, but where are these other 3 colors? Why I don't find people that talk to me about these other 3 colors? I see them. And that when alternative medicine...
You felt that people are talking to you in 6 colors in psychology and in arts?
Yes.
So there's beyond.
It was always, for me, an apprentissage, and a new area of knowledge that was open. And so I was very happy in the process. But then there was a point in the process where I felt, okay, I have this new system. Now I have psychology. Now I have art, like Keanu in Matrix. Now I know Kung Fu.
Yes.
But there was another piece missing, because I could feel that always you had this moment where, okay, but still I don't have the words, I don't have the means to explain some of the things I feel, even with psychology, even with art. So it was this never-ending disquiet, never-ending element of curiosity that was activated because it was a natural need. And that's when I moved into alternative medicine. Also because of personal health reason. In my mid-20s, I wasn't feeling very well. I had a very active and explorative youth, let's just say that. And so by the mid-20s, my body was protesting and was saying, okay, you cannot live in such a disordinate way. You cannot eat what you want at any time. You cannot sleep when you decide. You cannot do all the things that you want to try just because it's fun. And so I went to a doctor in Milan. I was in Milan at the time with my family in Italy. And this was one of the important doctors in the city. And I'm saying this because I know there is a conversation about health that is interesting for your listeners. We had a little bit of this conversation.
Yeah.
And basically, this person gave me 50 pills. They say, you take 50 pills every day, you will never feel better, but you will never feel worse. So Western science was giving me this option. 25 years old, you're going to be like that for life. No other solution. Okay. And then I moved to Paris in France for various reasons. And I met a person that now is a very good friend of mine and who was just coming back from China. He studied acupuncture for 5 years in China in the region where acupuncture has more history. A very dedicated person. And I tried. And I went to visit him. He said, yes, of course, I can help you. This is the wind that moves the leaves. That, the diagnostic in alternative medicine, in other tradition, is not Western explanation. So, okay, if it makes sense for you, just do you think we can do something? He said, yes, yes, we can work. I can help you. And 6 months later, I could eat almost all I want. I only could eat 3 things by the time I saw him. And I had to sleep 16 hours a day. I was very weak. Wow. So in 6 months already, I could eat almost all I want. And then I was going every week, one day. And in 4 years, he continued to work on the deeper levels. And so we went into the lungs, we went into the kidneys, we went into things connected to my family line, because my father had a kidney disease. And suddenly I'm here 25 years later, and I am healthier than I was when I was 20. So that was an interesting moment when you break beyond another paradigm, because of course we are taught the truth of our culture. And of course, Western medicine is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it doesn't explain everything. Just like psychology doesn't explain everything, or art, or physics. There is always maybe an element in the picture that is good for you, and it's not in the explanations that you have received. And so this is a process that brought me to this idea of transdisciplinarity that you mentioned, because any discipline is limited by definition. Any discipline will explain to you the things that are more pertinent, and any discipline will try to include everything. It's just in the history of Western science. Any discipline wants to expand and include everything, but it doesn't happen. So it's really interesting when you get to a position in your mind where when you have serenity about this. And you accept that, yes, I am studying this, I'm learning this, but you don't expect that you will be some sort of omniscient person, or you can explain everything in the world.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, that shift.
I think I have a little bit more understanding about what you're saying about transdisciplinary now, and I think it also touches like this kind of need that people are kind of looking for the system or the method that, from acupuncture solved all my problems to I don't know, Western medicine solved all my problems to, I don't know, Osho solves all my problems. And oftentimes it's not just one thing. So is that what you mean with transdisciplinary, that you kind of have to go through your own journey? Or how would you like explain transdisciplinary um, in contrary to interdisciplinary, would you say?
For instance, yes. Thank you. I see 2 questions in what you just said. I totally agree that we all have our own journey, and it happens before you're born, it continues after you die, the physical, anatomical birth and death. And it is just a way of understanding. These are words in my head, a system that we use to go through life, a reality model, if you wish. And I believe it's empowering when you understand your storyline is unique. Whatever you bring and whatever you discover, only you can do that. Only you can have that kind of access to the energy of the cosmos, or however you want to call it, the quantum field, or just the things you do in everyday life.
Yes.
I think that's for me, it's a very comfortable place when I work with people, to understand whether you're a teacher or a facilitator in different projects, in different contexts, It's really one of the base element in the approach that I use. Uh, you need to understand that you don't have the full picture. Only the person that comes to you for whatever reason they are in charge. You can be the support. You can provide some tools, some space, some words, like you have your resources that you give, and that's your job, that's it. The person who decides what to take and how to use it is not you, it's them. So the interpretation, the discovery is the process of being better in your health, having more agency in your life, and the goal is to facilitate that. When you are a teacher for your students, when you are a therapist for your clients, whether it's a one-on-one session, a group session. For me, that's really one of the base parameter-based dimensions in the methodology that I use, because, as you said, we always want to explain everything. And especially when you have these tools you want to give, you want to say, you feel like this because that. And maybe there is a language that is not, so
Yes.
so limiting, because in the end you are giving boundaries to the story of a person, and maybe that becomes part of the problem. Maybe the person can use what you bring, but they build a story of their own with what you bring. So your story don't include them. It's their story that will include yours. I think as a teacher, as a therapist, that is such an important key, because it gives you serenity and it gives you peace of mind. You try and honestly give all you can, but you're not God. You're not gonna heal people by the touch of your magic finger. You do all you can. Maybe the person will be better and you have helped.
Yeah.
But there are other people, as you said, there are other techniques, there are other elements in the picture, and most of all, you give agency.
Exactly what I wanted to say. Like
Yeah.
the what you give to the person in that sense, like for me, what it sounds like, you give them great agency of their own health, and it's I really had this like word in my mind the whole time, that it's kind of like agency and a certain um, also accountability and trust in their own healing, and maybe you can provide it and facilitate it rather than say, I healed you, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that language is strong. I think it makes weaker what you do. It doesn't make it stronger. So it's interesting for you as well to start thinking the other way around.
It also kind of touches something I'm reflecting about a lot, and I mean, I'm wondering what you think. I mean, you come from psychology, which is like a yeah, it's a form of science. I don't know if it can be exactly, but like in the science community, the the way that they're doing clinical trials um, are always with a placebo. Okay, when in medicine, for example, there's always a placebo, and it's already science has already acknowledges the power of the mind in relations for healing, but they still, for me, it may, let's say that we are taking a pill, you are taking a pill, and I'm taking a pill, and you go back to a wonderful home with great parents and loving parents, and I take a pill and I go home alone, and you heal and I don't, and the 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 pharmaceutical research would say, oh, our pill works, and the placebo, let's say, doesn't work. And actually, there's so many other things, and it makes me kind of reflect a lot about how we are viewing clinical trials in human, and just taking them for granted. If we already know, if science itself kind of like acknowledges that there is a power of the mind, we're not lab rats. We're not gonna be no research is done in a lab, and if you give a medicine for a person who's a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, he has a biography, he has history, he has traumas, he has a whole lineage of and maybe he doesn't even have the same problem. So, I mean, what do you think about this, and like with regarding to Western medicine and how it touches also your fields?
I think it's important to start from a place when you believe that truly people do what they can. It doesn't matter that they have a white lab coat or they are from some shaman tradition and dressed funny. It's important, I believe, to understand that part of the picture. So, am I in a situation where I believe the system, the studio where I'm in, the session that I'm having, the person that is with me is truly offering everything they can. And then there are methods in all traditions. So in Western science, you have statistics, of course. So these kind of elements that are not included in the scientific experiment, they are included in the statistics. So the idea is that, yes, it's true, you go home, you have a nice family, and I go home and I go home alone. But statistically, if we take a selection of so many people from these different areas, we can deduce that. And for me, that doesn't mean that one is right, the other is wrong. It means it is the best we can do with the scientific method. And we create knowledge that applies at a certain level, like a more generic category.
Yeah.
When you go more specific to the individual, I think it's interesting to go more in detail with what is influencing that situation, specific situation for which you look for help, creativity, whatever is your goal, that has to do with your own timeline, with your own storyline. So it's interesting to keep these two perspectives. One that is more, I have something that works all the time, everywhere, independent who does it, independent of the year and the geographic location. And that would be like one extreme, that the scientific method is timeless.
Yeah.
And then you have the other element, which is time-oriented, which is process-based, which includes the story of the person, as you said, the biography in a specific condition. So the more you go in this direction, the more you find that alternative techniques can help. And I believe we have both aspects are strong. Obviously, I believe it would be the same kind of absurd to say that alternative medicine and your personal history don't matter, as it would be to say the timeless, the scientific proven don't matter. So it's really a question, what is working for you now? And it becomes, it gives you agency when you have this question. Instead of saying, I don't want to know, I go to the person and then I accept whatever explanation.
Yeah.
Because if that works, fantastic. But when it doesn't work, then for me, it is this bigger space where you start to having these like moving spheres. You know, you have these two levels that move and you draw your own path. I believe there is a process of discovery which is very personal. And that happened for me. And I certainly value that element. And there are things for which I would go more looking for Western tradition, others for which I know that Western tradition is not strong, so I went and looked somewhere else and it helped me. So I value both, actually. And I wanted to go back to your previous question because I didn't answer
Go for it.
the transdisciplinary element. It's a good piece in the puzzle. The way that I understand transdisciplinarity comes from a person who is recognized as the modern founder of the transdisciplinarity. And he's a professor in university in France. His name is Bazarab Nicolescu. And he's a quantum physicist. And he explains in the book Manifesto of Transdisciplinarity, which is from the 90s, it's recent, that we can distinguish three main definitions, at least by that time. One is multidisciplinarity, one is interdisciplinarity, one is transdisciplinarity. So what's the difference? Multidisciplinarity in when you have a lot of people from different fields looking at the same thing. So we have this glass of water, you call an artist, you call a biologist, you call a musician, what do you see? And they tell you. And then you have multidisciplinary feedback and a lot of information that come from that system. Interdisciplinary is when you have the methods of one science used in another science. And it happens a lot. All the disciplines expand in that form a lot. For instance, you have forensic architecture. So they do criminal investigations and other sorts of investigations, studying the buildings and looking at the traces of the bombs. You know, here in Barcelona where we are, if you go to Plaza San Felipe Neri, you will see that the buildings have some scarring from the Civil War, and they can reconstruct what happened because they study the architecture, but it is not a study of to the goal of some
to build another
knowledge.
Building. It's actually to
exactly, it's to understand what happened. It's a historical study. So forensic architecture can be used like that. It's used in criminology, in scientific investigation for the police, or you have in sports, you have the study of performance and chemistry. How do we use chemical compounds and food to give more performance to the athlete? That is not where the education in the sport discipline comes from. It's an element that is added to the picture. It comes from medicine, it comes from dietology, and it's put inside the sport. So that's interdisciplinary. When you take the methods from another discipline. Transdisciplinary is something else. It's the idea that no matter what discipline you study, there is always something that you leave out of the picture. So it was born with this goal to look for all those things that no matter what you do, they are going to be outside of the picture, because the way that we study, the disciplinary study that we have in the West, ontologically, by definition, leaves out something. And it's fine, and it's good, it's not a problem. It just puts you into a better place when you understand that any discipline that you study has something that you zoom in, there is something in between, the matrix, the connecting point, and when you zoom out, there is something outside. So transdisciplinary is something that goes in and out, any discipline, and is common to all the disciplines. So it's the study of that information, which means it's not a meta-discipline, it's not another discipline that explains everything, no. I cannot do anything valuable. This is my perspective, it's not in the book from Professor Nescolescu. But one way that I have to explain it, because otherwise I think it could come out as pretentious, like, you know, oh, now you want to have this other field where you explain it. No. In my opinion, it's good to think about it like this. You can never do anything valuable with transdisciplinarity unless you include some discipline. So by itself, it doesn't exist. It's not just all the best discipline out there. No. It only takes meaning when you look at something through the lens of physics, biology, and you include this element of transdisciplinary. So, okay, how can I give this person who's a biologist, a physician, an artist, how can I bring this person to a place where they can see more about what they do? But I don't know about biology. I don't know about physics. I am not a dancer. And so it's interesting because you want to kind of be the same role that we said before. You want to be the coach. You want to be the person that helps, but you don't have the knowledge. You don't have the skills. So how you do that? I found it fascinating, and I went to study more and more, and eventually I made a doctorate in that field, which includes somatics, the study of the body, and Dreamtime, the study of the subconscious. Because for me, that is a good system. That is a good transdisciplinary approach. Because anywhere you go in the world, people have bodies. Anywhere you go in the world, people have dreams or intuition. And so if I have a system that uses those two dimensions with different strategies, exercises, and for the body, for the mind, then no matter where people come from, geographically, their personal background, their disciplinary knowledge, you can help them, you can give something. So that would be, if I explain myself well.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be the idea.
Yeah.
I don't know more than you, but maybe I can help you with some of my tricks and exercises to make you see more about your thing.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm sorry to interrupt the flow, but I promise it will be very short. If you like what you have seen until now, please do me a big favor and consider to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this content with your friends. It will help me a lot to spread the word of the new channel and bring more interesting guests like Andrea and others. And now, back to the video. Could you, that's now we have transdisciplinary out of the way,
Right.
and let's go a little bit more into depth into Dreamtime.
Yeah.
And the somatics. Can you elaborate a little bit about like what is the technique or the philosophy behind that?
Yes. The somatics is, in our approach, the study of the body, but not only anatomy. And that's why we combine somatics and dreamtime. So it's somatic psychology, put it in a more simple definition. So we want to understand the subconscious of the mind through the body. And how you do that? You go and create exercise to access parts of the body that are dormant, parts of the body that you have lost awareness about, because we all repeat certain movements every day. And your body is born to do 360-degree movements, and then we end up doing just a few repetitive movements.
Yeah.
And it's fine, you can live like that, but year after year, you lose access to these other trajectories in the body. And when you have an exercise that suddenly brings you there, brings your awareness there, and you move the tissue, the fascias, and you have this life, this nourishment that comes back, then it's interesting. You are in a part of the body that you weren't aware, so it was a subconscious part of the body. And so you access something in the subconscious of the body, and what happens, interestingly, is that suddenly you have images. Suddenly things come up. Can be memories, can be other sort of images. And this idea of the subconscious expands beyond the personal, becomes the transpersonal, and that is where the word dreamtime comes into the picture. So it's like three spheres, if you want, or even four, to make it easier. We have rational mind here, and we live through our life with logic. We explain things, we do our best to behave using our thoughts. And then you have the somatic awareness, which is these things that you understand through the body, but maybe the rational mind cannot explain, include. There are things that you feel, and it's difficult to explain, to name, but they are there. So it's a bigger dimension. And then you have somatic intuition, where you have these things that are in the mind, thoughts, emotions, but they are hidden. So they are not available to the consciousness, the awareness. And then you have the transpersonal subconscious, which is things that transform your relationships, your family history, the history of a place, why you go to some place and you feel one way, and in another place you feel different, and certain times of the day do something to you, some images, some person historically. So you can go as far as you like. Of course, there's people who are interested in exploring different timelines, past lives, future lives. So it can be very, very hippie and extravagant, but it becomes interesting when you keep the connections with the other things. And it's interesting because the first step when people come to a session or a workshop is just accepting that there are moments in your day where you have these feelings and images that come up, and you just don't use them because in rational mind logic, they are called parasite images. So in the West, we call them parasite images, like when you take a shower, you have images that come. Or for me, very often you open the fridge and you stay there 1 minute and you do nothing and you look demented to the people in the room, but there is a lot going on inside.
Yeah.
Or when you just wake up, or when you have a meditation, like even just a walk in the park is a meditation. Or you wait at the crosslight and you have so many images coming. You run. A lot of people do running because it's a form of meditation, or dance. In your case, I imagine can bring you into the space of trance-like connection to the world. So you are not disconnected. This is not something that is necessarily negative. I believe it is a way to be connected at a different level with things that are in your life. And the only thing that we are doing here is changing and putting positive words instead of negative, instead of parasite images. Why don't we try and say, hey, maybe this is an interesting information. And so we find strategies to use all these images and moments in your life, like little windows on the subconscious. And then it becomes an adventure. It's a lot of fun, and people have agency because suddenly the explanation of your life is not some just boring Excel and everything has bidimensional logic. No, your life is so much bigger. Yes, you have a rational mind, but you put it inside of something else. So you decide when rational mind is interesting. It's not all my life is decided by the Excel. No, I don't think that's powerful. I think there is a better language.
Yeah.
And that's why this is the strategy, you know, how you bring people in parts of the body that they never felt before. And they're like, oh, what's going on here? I feel this, I feel that. Okay, when did you feel that? What does it make you think of? Oh, okay, and we go into the mind. And then, okay, next week, you are at work, you are at the supermarket. Check if something happens, something makes sense. So there are a lot of strategies, of course.
Yeah.
I won't go too much
What
in detail.
what's your thoughts like about the connections between the emotions to the fascia, for example?
I think it's interesting, the fascia research trajectory. Right now, we live in a moment in history where it's very trendy. So there's a lot of interest in this world. And I like it not only because of what it brings to the knowledge of the body, but also because the fascia as the connective tissue, that is the definition of the fascia, can be used, you know, the word can be used to expand this connectivity from the body, from the individual to the transpersonal. So it's a very interesting paradigm for a methodology like ours, because it is about the space where things are connected. And so the structures in the body become meaningful. They have properties because of something that happens in the pathways that connect them. And so you are these soup of movements that become an embryo, and some movements transform into structures, other movements remain movements, like the circulatory, the breathing, and others slow down. They are still movements. All your tissues are movements. Your bones are tissue. So you have this movement at different speed in the body sometimes when you're born. Instead of being just, you know, one thing that moves, it becomes many things that move. Some slow down, some speed up. And so you are a system of things that move at different speed, in and out. And this movement continues and includes the things outside. So the fascia is interesting because what if we use the word and the exercises and the paradigms that they use to explore the things in the body to understand also the things outside, connection with the movement that continues beyond the body. There is a movement in the community, there is a movement in your family, there is a movement in the history of the place where you live, how that affects your own inner movements. So it becomes a more animistic study, like shamanism, as it was practiced and still is practiced in many parts of the world, but even in the West. If you go back a few centuries, you know, Western science, modern science is not, doesn't go beyond 2-3 centuries.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because you reconnect with all these ideas that are very liberating. And it's liberating because you don't say Western science is bad, rational mind is bad, oh, this yes, this no. No, you say all we have is fantastic. And praise God for all we have. I had a car accident. I am very happy there is a surgeon, working on me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's bad, but you can start to include. So the goal is how you include these other things. It's not this or that. And I think the fascia paradigm for the knowledge of systems in the body is very interesting because it allows to bridge over with the system beyond the body.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of like under the impression that the fascia texture is kind of holding a lot of emotions. So it's like for me, in a way, I mean, this is a theory that it's kind of like that the the tension and the pain and and the healing needs to kind of come from there, either from you, from relaxing and working from that, or also with another one, or there's also like what we were talking about before, that um, for me is interesting to hear what you were thinking, because I think like there's like an emotion. For example, with my work in decoding motion, I think I'm working with movement as a means for expression, and I want people to feel first and then move, meaning like an emotion is preceding the motion. And in between, if you want to break it more, there's a physical sensation, meaning I feel sad. There is a void in my stomach, and it makes me open my arms, for example. But or I wanna even to perform a physical task, and that has to do with lifting, heavy lifting. So I need to get to feel a certain, I don't know, anger or motivated or something, see how that sensation feels in my body, and that actually carries the movement. And I think in a sense that kind of connects to the fascia rather than the muscle. That's like something that I am thinking about right now. I'm wondering if do you agree, or what do you think?
I think it's a very, very interesting language because the fascia envelops the structures in the body, but the fascia is also part of the structures in the body. So in a muscle, you have a lot of fascia. So you can move your awareness towards the fascia, or you can move your awareness towards the contractile tissues, which is the red part, but they're both there. So I think it's absolutely pertinent to say, hey, why don't we go and investigate what happens in the hidden? Because instead of focusing always on the tonic action, let's explore what happens in the consequence. Let's explore the passive. So you move with your own research and your own language. I believe it's very interesting because you move into these parts of the body that are more subconscious, that are more invisible, and you do it by breaking into a process. I like it a lot, like the emotions before the motion. Yeah. I like that a lot because for me in the exercises, I teach the facilitators to play with the movement of awareness from the start. You do something with your body, you give an instruction to your body, but you give an instruction to your mind. So do something with your arm, but move your awareness to your knee. What happens there? Are you relaxing your knee? Okay, why was it tense? Move your awareness to the head. So it's interesting. You start playing with these two layers, and one is more close to the fascia, the subconscious, the passive, the invisible, but you don't lose the active. That's the whole point. You don't become mad because you start exploring the subconscious. You don't lose your rational mind. It's just a thing that you can do. It's fun, it's super interesting. It holds a lot of information that is so valuable, but we don't have words. That's why we have projects like yours, like mine, and so many others. That's why we're so interested, because it's obvious that there's things that are valuable there. And we, as a society, we are curious, we want to know more. I like it a lot when you do this explanation of dividing the process into pieces, because in my experience, the time-oriented that we were talking about before, that is where it's a little bit like a musician. Some sequences, processes, you want to define in one word, one experience, but others you cannot. You have to define in 2 words, 2 experiences. And so which ones you decide to break down? Because maybe people are used to think of them and so experience them, and so artificially remove from the experience a lot of stuff because they think of them in one step. When you say no, think of it in 2 steps: emotion and then motion. And then suddenly, if you have 2 things, okay, what's in between?
Yeah, exactly.
When you have 2 things, you give agency.
Yeah.
And then they decide. This one step. This one 2 steps. It's a whole enormous bit. I think it's a very interesting way to talk about the same, how we access this information that is hidden in the body. But then it has to do with much more than the body.
I guess for me, it's kind of it was originally related to my dance, and even also my project was kind of also is taken not a shift but another turn into using that expression for healing, and it's it's interesting to hear your thoughts about it. I'm really curious about like what do you do like when thanks
Sure.
when a patient comes to you either in one-on-one session or in the workshop, like could you give an example of a certain process or like what people can expect when they come to a workshop?
Yeah, sure. The element of transdisciplinarity has made this approach that I developed very plastic, very adaptable. So at the moment, after 10 years, 12 years that this system exists, that this approach exists, I can see 3 main trajectories. One is for creativity, and I explored a lot with artists, dancers, and it's such a pleasure. It's easy. There's a lot of people who immediately connect to things that are, it's like children playing together. It's a lot of fun. Then there is the self-growth, personal growth, or well-being trajectory. And then there is the corporate. You want to have leadership and well-being, we call it in our project. Because there's people who, a lot of people, they go through life and they have an office work, and they have the right to be healthy and to expand their lives, and they want that.
It's a human right, man.
Yes, exactly.
It's a human right.
Exactly. So in the end, it's interesting because the exercises you give are the same. It's really body and dreams, but you have to change the container. Because if you go in corporate, you have to talk about team building and brainstorm creativity or stress management or all these things, because it's the language of the place where they live, is the language of their system, their reality model.
Yeah.
And you always start where they are. You don't start where you are. This is such another key element if you are a teacher. Or, you listen. Okay, what are the words that make sense for this person, that make this person move? And what happens if I say this or not say this? If I move in the room or not move in the room? And then you start organizing the storytelling, a sentence or a sequence or a protocol that makes sense for the person.
Yeah.
And one part is certainly they call you and they say, hey, I'm curious about this health thing. I broke up in a relationship. I have a creative project. I want a group day workshop for my team of 25 people, whatever it is. And so you develop a protocol depending on these elements, and you build a sequence of activities that is respectful of where the person is coming from. If it's a group, you have to work at a scale that is more inclusive of various trajectories, because you don't know who connect with what. So you build a space and a sequence of exercises where you give like 10 different entry points. And you know that some will connect with some people, some will connect with others. And then when it connects, it's interesting because you have the advantage of group dynamics.
Yeah.
Because even somebody who doesn't feel or is not sure, when they see that the other two people say, oh my God, I feel this way, they feel authorized. Yeah. Because there is a lot of shame, guilt, fear, oh my God, I cannot say that I see things. I cannot say that I feel things. Some people, and I include myself, I have gone through those moments. I think it's human for whatever reason. Sometimes we are ashamed or we fear that saying those kind of things is illegal. You cannot say, because it's not explained officially in some book.
I guess it's kind of like not in the, it's just not in the culture for the past 200 years or so. But if you were like 500 years and if you would say you see things, like, sure, man, this is, I mean, this means that, and it's really strange. I'm sorry I'm cutting you, but I'm really thinking like around the time of our parents' age, I think, because our grandparents still had, grandma's medicine, the chicken soup, or, the Jewish penicillin or whatever, But I think more or less our parents' generation, or maybe the grandparents, started to kind of buy into technology is the way, is the new religion, and every other thing suck. Everything that was before is ignorant, unproven, not worthy. So right now there is a return of what you are offering, for example, and what like alternative medicine and traditional medicine is offering. But there was like a really like golden years for, I mean, still that I really think like the new religion is science, which I have to say, like, even for me, it took a really huge crisis in my physical system to lose faith in it, to a certain extent. Like you said, if you have an accident or you need antibiotics, you're very happy that there is a hospital nearby. But there's also a lot of cases that they either can't help or they can just do more harm than good. And uh, in that sense, what I feel I'm trying to say, that's kind of I lost that train of thought for a second, but it's kind of um, connect me to where we were, like the.
You said our grandparents, our parents, our grandparents.
Oh yeah, so like you were. It was like natural to feel like that, but even for me in the beginning, when I struggled with my injury, I was like, no, doctors need to solve this. It's not going to be in my mind. It's not going to be in my system. It's not going to be in my traumas. It's not. It might have an effect, but this needs, in order to feel good, I need to heal or whatever. And it's actually gonna kind of, and just after like fostering and adopting this kind of state of mind, healing and recovery could even start take place. And it's something that it's a paradigm shift that maybe for some people it's obvious, but for a lot of people it's not. For me in the beginning it was not, and then And also I think like for the longest time, I think like for the past, let's say, 80 years, it was like, okay, we science is, like I said, science is the new religion, and everything that is unproven, it's unproven. If you want, the doctor will tell you, should I go and try acupuncture? You can try. I had a doctor saying to me, you need to do an operation. And I said, like, what about acupuncture? What about physiotherapy? Like, that was like a year, 2 years ago. It's like, you can do it, but I wait here and you will come back in a year and you will do surgery. And he was doing this. And I obviously left I never came back to that doctor. Unfortunately, I did do a surgery, and it's a story for another
Okay.
time. But that said, that you can allow people to feel that, especially in an environment like you said, the corporate environment, that's, I think it's very directed in that sense, like science based, and especially people that are maybe in the tech field and they need proof. You know, what is this is happening? I have no proof.
Yes, there is a lot of mechanisms in our society that bring you into that mental space.
Mm.
I think that's why it's interesting to find a language that is inclusive of these things, because of course they exist, of course science
And
exists.
people want them.
But yeah, but also you don't discard everything else because something else exists as well.
Yeah.
So, and then it's tricky because how you decide when to do what is a personal journey. So suddenly you have to take responsibility. You cannot just say, oh, okay, I opened the yellow pages. I know this is an old example. I don't even know if they exist anymore. In Italy, we had these big books where you find the professionals in some
Yeah,
discipline.
everybody. Yeah, like they say that back in the day, I used to work in a broker's company, and the CEO, he was an old guy, and he told me, like, you don't know, but in our times,
Okay.
all the companies, they wanted to be called AA.
Yeah, right. So they are
AA
first.
technologies, AA, because they would be first in the yellow pages.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. I was like, man.
For me, it's interesting what you say. You make me think there is an ebb and flow, what I observe through history. There are
Mm,
moments where this need to be connected with nature, so the harmony of nature from the inside,
yeah.
is in coherence with the harmony of nature from the outside. So these animistic moments, these more uh, periods where you understand your health has to do with something that is also happening outside of your body. And you have it in the 70s in US, the hippie movements. Now there is interest, as you say, again, in these more alternative medicine techniques. Uh, the Art Nouveau movement, at the beginning of the 20th century, Art Nouveau, Modernismo in Spain, was this movement where in all sectors of society, people were interested in, okay, what's going on? Let's imitate nature. Let's learn from the shapes and the process of nature. So you have Gaudi making buildings and all these things that have
Uh,
to do with the incorporating nature. And we have it in people who are expert of the body and body techniques. And I I learned from teachers who studied from teachers, and this go back to one that comes to mind. Elsa Gindler was a pioneer of movement techniques at the end of the 19th century. And then in this period of the Art Nouveau, she had tuberculosis, so one lung was not functioning. She had to learn how to move and breathe and live with one lung only. She developed a very interesting breathing technique that was transmitted to her disciples. Dr. Lily Ehrenfried, who went to Paris because she was chased by the Nazis in Germany, she went to Paris and taught my teacher. And so it's interesting because there is this, it's like a breathing uh, movement, this ebb and flow, where as a society, we become more interested in these things and then, oh, let's go back to something timeless and absolute, or no, let's move and introduce the things of now, the feelings that you have only in a specific moment, only from a specific person, only from a specific place. And we have these rhythms also as people. I think in our lives, we have moments where we are more going in one direction or the other. So again, is this how you, these two spheres, this, how you coordinate these movements, you know? And maybe in some country, they are full on into alternative medicine now. And in another country, they are fighting hard to be tech people. So it's super interesting. You know? It becomes like a picture with many colors.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's pertinent, but you made me think of that with your explanation.
By the way, how do you see, because you work a lot with arts, with artists, and how do you see, like I'm very interested in it, obviously, and how do you see the in your eyes the relation with between like arts and healing?
Well, these are trajectories that are explored also in Western knowledge, Western systems. Because, for instance, when you do psychology, you can go into art therapy, dance therapy. So there is this interdisciplinary connection. But of course, the field of art and the field of dance goes beyond that. For me, it's interesting to work with movement in particular, because when you use movement, you can have two bodies moving at the same time. When you work with words, you cannot have two people talking at the same time. So that's also interesting for me, you know? With words, you have to have a sequence. With movement, something happens because things are moving at the same time. You can't do that with words. Interesting. So you can do something with moving the body that you cannot do with your thoughts and your words.
It's
That's an example, you know.
It kind of jumps to like a conversation that I had with a student, and he said that like I noticed that he is constantly very much fixated with his head with the partner while moving. And by the way, he has a background in martial arts, and this is it's kind of very typical for people that come from martial arts. I mean, I come from martial arts, so it's I see it clearly, and because for the whole time that you are practicing, you kind of need to be focused on the person that you are fighting and training with, and I could feel that the other person unknowingly was feeling like imagine that I talk to you and I always look at you, you know, and I don't take my eyes out of you, so you start to feel uncomfortable. You know,
it's strange.
And afterwards, when we were talking about it, he told me like, look, actually I was thinking about it, I was focusing on her to like from his like desire to give, you know, to like it's not like he was not even in his own body just because he wants to give. So it's kind of into you can kind of like uh give an analogy to like a, I don't know, like a parent that kind of like gives so much attention to the kid that it smothers it, you know, that smothers him or her. And in that sense, he they lose the connection, you know, because he doesn't think about himself. She is blocked. Instead of taking the gaze away and relaxing the atmosphere, and then we start to think about like techniques for that, and yeah, for me the correlation with art with art and healing is it's kind of like for me art is kind of like always there. It was always there, and it's kind of like always something that I fall on when I'm sad and depressed. There's always like a studio or a guitar or a piece of paper, you know, and that it's kind of it needs it's to express. Um, yeah, I, I'm actually curious about like Also, just one last question before we start to wrap it up, like a little bit about like your influences. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you were telling me before about William Reich, but I'm really interested about like who are like your biggest influences. Who do you follow? Who did you follow? Who led you in your like who are your
I'll tell you for sure, but you made me think so many things with your
we have to do another one,
I,
man. We have to do
yeah,
another
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, just one thing that what I like about what you explain is this idea that we were talking about. You do something with your body, but
Mm.
where are you moving your awareness?
Mm.
Changes completely what happens. Independent of what you see from the outside, where people move from the inside completely changes. Like the example of lifting the rock, or this
Mm.
example with the martial arts. And that's something that you learn when you study alternative medicine. For instance, that's one of the things that I learned there.
Yeah.
Because where you are in your body changes the question that you ask the body of the other person. And then you have a different reaction. So there is a system, there is a conversation
Yes.
that goes on depending on where you move your awareness in the body. And from the outside, you see nothing.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, absolutely.
You can also see it. I mean, I love the classes that to mix them with professionals and non-professionals when they're moving, because they both inspire each other if they're really open, you know. So it's kind of like a professional will do a movement that a non-professional will never think of, but also the other way around,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, because we all have our patterns.
No, completely, completely.
Yeah.
So yes, of course, I had many people that inspire me in different moments, and that includes people that I work with, and that includes people who study with me, because that's the whole point. I could never do the things that they will do, and I am so looking forward to receive. That's the
Mm-hmm.
most joyous moment when you become the student again, and people show you, look what I did. And you're like, wow, okay, I never
Yeah,
thought this
man.
could be done. So it's fantastic. I would say that yes, all these um, research trajectories from the Art Nouveau period, other periods where people were looking at this harmony between inside and outside, absolutely. So shamanist, tradition, alternative medicine, there are many. I uh, I found in within the trajectories that I was within psychology and the other fields that I studied, some people who were more sensitive to those things. Of course, we have these pioneers like you mentioned Reich or Jung,
Yeah.
Carl Gustav Jung, is the person that in the West introduced the idea of the unconscious as the transpersonal unconscious. So something goes on in your mind that is not only invisible, but it's connected to the movement of the things outside. So it's a modern day shamanism and animism, but within the structure of Western science. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And under Freud, who was obviously very famous and created this system of knowledge that is psychoanalysis, there were incredible pioneers. One was Wilhelm Reich, who had this theory of orgons, which are the molecules of life. So in his writings and his research, he was postulating there are these molecules of life, and so where are they? Where are them? How you use them? And you create different trajectories in the body, in the conversation, in the therapy, to change the movement of these molecules of life and use them. And one interesting person that followed these ideas was Ida Rolf. Ida Rolf went to United States in the 30s, I believe, 1930s, and she developed the Rolfing technique. And the
And
Rolfing,
that was based on
Wilhelm
William
Reich,
Reich.
yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. And so that's fascia, of course, that was one of the pioneers working with fascia. And then Rolfing movement was developed in the 60s out of Rolfing, because Rolfing is on a bed table and they do
Yeah.
sort of therapy, manual therapy. But there is Rolfing movement. So how do you transform the body in a way that follows that sensibility, but with movement, through movement. And it's super interesting. And there is a person here close to Barcelona, I can give you the number if you want, that I work with. He's a friend, he's a teacher, he's one of the people who train Rolfing movement therapists in Europe, in the whole of Europe. He's a very high level person. I work with him as a patient, I work with him as a teacher, we organize workshops together. And it's interesting because with movement, you can achieve a lot. So that is one trajectory. Of course, then in the United States, you have anatomy trains by Tom Myers in the 80s, and there's the big wave of fascia interest. And then since the 2007, 2008, you have the Fascia Research Congress, super interesting online. You find a lot of articles, and there's everything from psychology to all other fields, how they connect with fascia. So it's super interesting, and these are all trajectories that, depending on where you are in your life, you can choose one or the other. You know, you can do a practical thing or you want to study, depending. And that would be for the holistic somatic. I think that's very interesting. Then in the art department, I studied with Roy Ascott. He's a pioneer in art, in the art scene, but he's a very good educator. And he created this web that is called the Planetary Collegium. So he created a PhD for artists, because historically PhD was more for people in university, not the Academy of Arts. And he had this revolutionary teaching system in the 70s. And he went on to San Francisco and Canada. He became a very big educator, not only an artist. And so I had the luck of studying with him for my PhD. And I think that's the sensibility of the artist. We go back to the beginning of the conversation. It's like you allow yourself to explore. And then there is a moment for explanation. It's not the explanation before the exploration. You have to go out there, and then you feel things. And then there will be a moment where you organize the knowledge, and you can make 1,000 explanations. But,
you can't know before you explore.
Exactly. That was the idea. So for me, super valuable. I won it, and that was fantastic. And so these are certainly important trajectories. But then, depending where you are, I think it's very important to find something in presence, if you can, in person or online. I would say that it's more important to feel in the body if something connects with you and makes you feel more abundant, makes you feel more serenity. One thing that I like to say often is, as a sort of very simple and fast strategy in life, if it feels right, but it makes no sense, be curious. If it feels wrong, but it makes perfect sense, be suspicious.
Yes.
Because your body tells you something. Your body tells you something.
Yeah. The intuition. Cool. Just before we wrap it up, tell me a little bit about what's going on right now in your personal, professional goals. What projects are happening now? How people can reach those projects? Where can we find you?
Yes, the Institute of Applied Somatics.com. I don't know if you're going to be on.
I'll put it
a
on
little text
for sure.
It's where you find the three main programs that we have. One is for breathing, one is for nervous system and fascia, one is for pelvic floor. So 3 areas in the body where you want to take time and explore in depth. And then the 3 modules combined give you the diploma in somatic psychology for people who are interested, but you can do it separate. And then in the becomebecome.com website is where I developed the project for art education. And it's been going on for 10 years approximately. And it's very interesting. There are nomadic residencies. So people in the field of art, whether it's movement, whether it's other kind of art, join together for a period, and we do exercises like the somatic and the Dreamtime. And this can be applied for a workshop, a 2-week intensive, a year-long curriculum of study. So it's very interesting. But the exercises are the same that you learn in the Institute of Applied Somatics. You change the format because of the way that art works. So for art incubation, art education. And then the third one would be the leadership and well-being.com. And that's where we work with corporate and give them maybe a 3-hour workshop. Like now in a month, I have to give, I'm laughing because they called me yesterday and they say, I have to give a 20-minute workshop. Like this mega corporation, they come and they meet in Barcelona and they want from 8 to 8:20, you have to give exercises for well-being. And then the next day from 8 to 8:20, okay. And you do it because, they have the right. I want to do it. But
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because you talk about this feeling the flow and then you have to be, okay. So we find the ways. And these are the 3 trajectories that I'm working, depending on what your listeners are interested in, they can click and they find.
Amazing.
Me or my
Amazing.
colleagues, we are.
I can say that personally, I think your work is super interesting. Your way of thinking and like approach to healing and movement and the body is it's mind opening, and it kind of like I think it interfaces a lot with the way I see um, uh, in my general philosophy of the body and movement. So yeah, man, thank you so much. It's I mean we can do this all day. I think we have to do it
Yes.
another time, but
Yes.
I mean there's a lot more things I want to discuss with you, but
With pleasure. With pleasure.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
See you next time.
Yo. Hey guys, I want to thank you so much for staying on until now, and I hope you enjoyed this inspiring conversation with Dr. Andrea Traldi. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and also share this podcast with your friends who might find this information useful and interesting. This will help me a lot to spread the word out of our innate power for self healing and also to bring more interesting and inspirational guests like today. Thank you and see you on the next time.